Welcome to Align Yourself podcast by Ebony Rose, a podcast where we have deep and eye-opening conversations with some inspiring individuals. I'm a mum with a wild past, and over the last few years, I've been on a journey transforming from a maiden to a mother, unlearning and relearning everything I thought I once knew, realizing we really know nothing at all. So come with me whilst I share my journey, have some sober D&Ms, and be prepared to have your mind blown. Welcome back to Align Yourself podcast. One thing I know we all struggle with at some point is communication, whether that's with our partner, our kids, or even in high stress situations where safety and emotions collide. Today, we're deep diving into that, and I've brought on someone who lives and breathes this work. Scott, you're a communications specialist, a security, safety, and risk expert, as well as a proud father and loving husband. I've been following what you share about human psychology on socials, and honestly, I find it so fascinating. I knew I had to bring you onto the show, and I'm really excited to get into this episode with you.
Great to be speaking with you. Thanks very much for reaching out and for following some of the stuff that I do. The only thing I'll say is the order with some of those, I'll always put dad and father, like your father and husband first, because I think prioritization for us is important. It's our why. So, but thanks very much. I'm really looking forward to the chat.
Well, that's exactly why I'm here with you today, Scott, because family is everything to me. Since becoming a mum, I have taken it as my number one role in the world, and how anything I find come up for me within the shadows. I talk about our shadows, and we all have shadows that are lurking in the background, and that's been programmed into us, not just by our parents, but school and friendships in school. And we grow up to be this person based on everything that's happening around us. And then we become a parent, and whatever you haven't worked on, your kids will show you. So one of those things that I really want to learn to become better at is communication. So thank you for coming on. I'm really excited to get into this with you. One thing I've found super interesting to understand, and the depths of why people say, do, act underneath their words and their actions, and why I stumbled across your account, is you love to actually teach people how to read people's body language and tell if the person that is with us today, that's also listening, how we can better understand each other and communicate whilst navigating some mixed signals and learning about body language. So I'd really love to get into understanding how we can better read people's body language.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a couple of things around this. I mean, you touched on a really important point that about as parents, I think aside from being with parents and that as well, with what we do, sadly, with the people in an adult life, we look at people as their email signature or their LinkedIn job title, and everybody has multiple personalities. What we deal with, they're all, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, these sort of things, and the multiple personalities. And sadly, when it comes to the communication part, it's something that we don't spend time on and focusing. So there's a large gap there. And so we make some communication mistake. I shared this in the keynote that I did this morning. The people that we deal with in our lives, we look at just at people's faces to see based are they happy, sad, angry, am I safe around you, those sort of things. And the thing is, we've been lying with our faces since we were kids. You got that terrible Christmas present where you've worn that your auntie's giving you that terrible jumper, and you've smiled and gone, actually, I really liked it. Thank you, when you really didn't. And so part of the communication thing is understanding that the face where we gravitate now, looking at someone's eyes and mouth, is only a very small part. And so we need to think more broadly. And so that's one part. The other thing is from the face, and also about the words that people say. There's a lot of things about connection that I think are important to cover on. And we look at the way that people communicate, their rhythm, speed, volume, pitch, all these things tell us something about a person. Now, if you're just listening to the words you say, you're going to miss so much, because some of the things we're looking for is like what I've got from you now, a slight head tilt and your blink rate slowed down because you're interested in what I'm saying. You're sharing with me more of your neck space and showing some of that vulnerability. And that's what we want with people, because the thing is, the people that communicate that like around us, like for these sort of things as well, if we take some more time to realize that, whether it's personal or professional relationships, we start those relationships on a higher plane of trust. We're more centered. Our words land better, but we're in a better position to understand truly where people are sitting and how they're dealing with these sort of things. So I think there's a lot of things about the communication point of view, body language, the verbal and non-verbal elements that we should spend some time on. And I think it's It's a skill that sadly we don't share enough in schools or even for adults. Like you're learning at such a mix. So it's a really valuable discussion and impactful discussion. But it's a discussion that also parents should be having with their kids, because I've got to say that they don't. And some of the sessions that I do, I get a mix of professionals, and then 3 or 4 year 11 and year 12 high school students will come in the back, and they're in a session on how to communicate with confidence and influence. And so I speak to them and say, I want to know what's got you coming here today. What is it about that? And they said, we do so much about communication online with messaging and all these other things. And so we've realized before we go in the workforce, we haven't got the skills that we need to better understand really what people are saying. It's not the words they're saying, what they're really saying with the totality of the communication. So I think it's the right time for these discussions as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got two things I really want to then cover in this episode going forward today is I guess first is learning how to read people's body language, because like you've just said, you've listed off a few things that you've noticed in me. So my blink rate slow down, my head tilt forward. I'm invested in what you're saying. I'm present, I'm listening, and I'm wanting to retain. And then there's also I've got an 8-month-old baby, and I feel like she was my second, so I feel like my brain
Yep.
like my brain hasn't recovered, and I feel like I'm still in that transition of having limited brain capacity. So where I'm going at with that is that whilst you're talking to me and you're noting things down in the back of your head, and if we're noticing that within someone, because this is
Yep.
awareness, right? When we become more aware of the background information going on, you can then realize, okay, this person's not safe. So before we move on to that, I also then want to go into the tools on how we can, if we can identify that. I want to know, like, do we tell them or do we just note it and then move on
Yeah.
and da da da? Coming back to, okay, because I want to touch on what you said. You noticed within me I was invested in what I was, and how did you do that? Let's go into that.
Okay, so part of it is to give you a bit of background to this now, because I get questions all the time as well. Does this work for everybody? Does this work for people with Botox? All that sort of stuff. So a couple of things here. I need to give you a little bit of the background. I'll keep it as least sciencey as I can, because without knowing exactly the people that listen to what you put out, I want some stuff that people can absorb and use as soon as they hear it. And if we get sciencey with it, that's not the best way to understand these sort of things. But in simple terms, to give you a couple of principles with this sort of stuff, we used to walk around on all fours. And so when we did, our heart, lungs, veins, our main organs were all protected. Now that we stand up, they're open and vulnerable. So what that means to us is when we're relaxed, open and comfortable, like I am with you now, that my areas under my chin, my belly button, and my groin, there are 3 power zone areas. I'm comfortable having those open and relaxed. There's also a line across our shoulders here that comes down to our belly button, a triangle, which is what we call the ventral area. We align that with honesty and integrity. So if someone's communicating with you and they've got these areas open and relaxed, they're showing you that I feel comfortable and safe with you. That's why sometimes when you deal with somebody, all of a sudden the arms will come across their body. Or for example, and this is more females than males, you'll find that they'll touch this part of their neck if they're wearing a necklace. They might repeatedly touch that part of the neck and these sort of things as well, or they'll rub the necklace or around their jumper. So there's 2 reasons for that. One is because if there's some slight discomfort or stress, your body's wanting to cover that area, so we do that. It's why when people public speak, they put their hands in front of their groin. It's because of that vulnerable area. The second part to that then is about the repeat touching part. When our brains have stress or discomfort, it sends a signal to our body that says, I'm not feeling comfortable right now. Can you soothe me? Can you calm me? And to do that, we'll do repeat physical touching. So we might find we touch our hand or we spin a ring or something or a watch. Now, the reason why these things, if they escalate, so from something like touching the hand, the more stress we get or that we're carrying, it escalates closer to the brain. So you might say we scratch our neck or these sort of things, or that's why we touch the neck. So the reason why a lot of people will repeatedly touch that part of their neck, it's covering the power zone, but the repeat self-touching is the body soothing the brain. So the thing is, the reason I'm mentioning these sort of things that we look for, the science or the part behind it is when we're relaxed and comfortable with people, we're comfortable having these areas open. And so when you're communicating, if you want to speak with confidence, you want to speak with impact, then have these areas open, be seen and be visible. When you're communicating with others, see how they are and see if there's changes to their baseline. So see, for example, if they do things that all of a sudden they put their bag in their lap, or you and I are talking, and the reason I said about the head tilt, we're not like puppy dogs. If you make a noise in front of your puppy, they go like this. They're doing that out from an auditory point of view. We tilt our head out of interest and connection. And so I want people to view things as being, this is me sharing more of my next space with you. Does that make sense? I've had times where I've given advice to stadiums and mass gathering events where I'm from a control room looking across the other side of a stadium, and a man's come behind a woman to give her a drink, and she's put her bag in her lap, ducked her chin, and adjusted her body. And I've said, let's get security there straight away. She's covered all of her power zones in 2 or 3 seconds without hearing a word. Security come over, and the man who's hanging around might disappear, and the lady has said, "Oh, thank you. I don't know who he was. How did you know?" Well, we knew because her body language told us. So these things that we see out of interest, and it's changing our thinking a bit because we look at people's eyes and mouths. The feet are the most honest part of the body, and how people change how much they share of these power zones with you, it always has meaning. It doesn't happen by accident. So that's part of the science behind that. The reason why when you do that head tilt, somebody's sharing more of that space. So you're sharing vulnerability or connection with me. Does that make sense? The other
Absolutely.
part then with the blink rate is because we blink 11 or 12 to 14 blinks per minute on average. When you're if you're stressed, and you'll see if you watch the news or any reality TV or anything like that, people's blink rates spike. You see, you can watch any news, any Married at First Sight episode or whatever, and someone's under stress and their blink rate spikes. But when they're relaxed and interested, their blink rate slows down. So what you showed me before was your blink rate slowed down and you got some head tilt. So I just did a keynote to like 300 people, and I was watching the front rows. So I knew with which parts where I got them, what part they're interested in. Now, you mentioned probably one of the most important bits, and I don't think you realize how important it was. And I'm sorry I've been speaking for a bit, but I'll say this bit and then I'll go quiet for a bit. Is if you see something, do you say something? Now, after doing some training and after listening to what we're going to share today, people will be more aware of some discomfort indicators, some pre-violent indicators, some confidence indicators. But if I said something to you that made you uncomfortable and I say, "Oh, Ebony, I've seen you've got some lip compression and other parts now, I've made you uncomfortable," your response is going to be, "Oh, hang on, no, I haven't." And so I lose that. I'm much better to see these things and then to see, now that I've seen that, adjust my speech until I see you open back up. So these are a new set of eyes, a new lens for you, a new superpower. It doesn't mean you always need to call it out. It's something for you to see and then adjust your connection so you can better connect or better be of service to the people you're dealing with.
Wow. But as I was listening to this, I was thinking that there's some people I would be like shoulders wide open, my whole body's
Yeah.
looking at, and then there's some people I find I tilt away from, my knees cross over,
Yeah.
and my body gets shy from. But it's like my heart wants to be, but my body feels
Yeah.
a different way. What do we do then when our body is finding that that person isn't,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, safe?
These questions are the absolute ideal questions. And I know you said you were going to send some questions through. So the fact we've done none of this, I'm going to say you've probably asked one of the other really important questions. There's a fantastic behavior video where there's a lady standing in a lift and she's got her legs crossed and she's sitting here typing on the mobile phone. Now, all of a sudden, the front door of the lift opens and a man walks in that she doesn't know. Without changing her typing speed on her phone, her feet uncross and she stands up straight. It's the primal part of her brain saying, I can't have a survival stress response with my legs crossed. And so she uncrosses her legs and stands up straight without changing her typing speed. There's no conscious thought about this. These sort of things, and the reason why it's important, and we'll talk a little bit about then some of the violence indicators and these sort of things as well, because safety is really important, is that I do a lot of expert witness work with solicitors with different areas, and I've got to review the statements, but also the video footage, because people say the violence just came out of nowhere. But then when I watch, I see self-pacifying gestures that have escalated. I see tension. I see their breathing location has changed from their diaphragm up until their chest, that they've bladed their behavior. And I see 7, 8, 10, 15 indicators before any of these things have happened. So with this, and probably why I do so much that I share across the TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and these sort of things, is it's good from I use the novelty of reviewing politicians, serial killers, reality TV to give behavioral elements, because people walk away being more aware so they can pick up some of these changes in behavior and identify safe versus non-safe circumstances. And so people's behavior, they show you sometimes by space awareness or proxemics. We all have our own need for space. And what I mean by that is, from your body out to 70 centimeters is your intimate space, out to 1.40 meter is your personal space. and people are not aware of protecting their own personal space. So people will sometimes show you their intent that they're aggressive or other parts by coming in and putting their hands out and leaning on a counter and leaning in on you or doing these sort of things. They claim they take your space. And we're often not aware of that they're sharing with you, not by words, but by their actions, what their intent is. So the first part is be more alert and aware. Don't walk around with two noise cancelling headphones in and your phone looking at a device. I know that we like doing that, but you miss so much of what's going on around you. So being alert, aware, and present is the key thing for starting that sort of stuff.
Wow. Okay. So we're moving into how to protect yourself, and a
Mm.
lot of the listeners in listening with us in this moment are mums. So can we talk about how we can protect our kids then from the parks? Because just the other day, me and my mum friends were at a park, and it was an enclosed playground, and one of the mums noticed a man who wasn't with any children who parked his bike and got out of the off the bike and come into the enclosed playground and walked around the enclosed playground. And so we were then all on high alert. So I feel like a lot of mums are wanting to know, how can we better protect our children?
Yeah, I mean, with the first part, you started with it with another good point there about from the awareness point of view and situational awareness. And sadly, post what occurred with some bad circumstances, whether it be Westfield Bondi or any of these sort of things, and I do the follow up and some of the stuff I do with media around those, is people are walking around not aware because they're device centered. Sometimes they've got the noise cancelling headphones in and looking at the device. The first part is being alert and aware is the number one thing. Sometimes people aren't alert and aware because they don't want to make the eye contact, and eye contact can be difficult. So please don't let me forget, before we finish today, I'll share some tips about people, whether you lack confidence, whether you're neurodivergent, about how we improve eye contact in a way that doesn't make you feel uncomfortable. Because sometimes people are not aware because they're not wanting eye contact. They take it as being direct or confrontational. So the first thing is about an awareness point of view, but also an awareness with your kids. And what I mean by that is speak to them about some of these sort of things. Speak to them about the fact about from an awareness about looking up. I used to play a game with my kids, and well, we're going to be sharing some history now. I would go from one end of the shopping center to the other end with my kids. I'd say, let's walk through the shopping center. When I get to the other end, I want you to tell me who the biggest troublemaker is and what they did for a job. Now, it doesn't matter what they said at the end. Get at the end, oh, he's a big unit. He must be a builder. It doesn't matter what the kids have done. What have we got the kids doing on the way through? Head up, alert and aware of what's around with them. Now, if you do these sort of games for checking these sort of things, kids become more alert and aware. Or you start doing the whole memory game thing and these sort of things. Like I remember doing stuff even as a kid myself, getting the whole baking tray. If you're a mum at home, get a baking tray and put 10 random items on there, a pen, a car key, a banana, whatever else. And then give your child 5 seconds to look at it and then chuck the tea towel over the top. And you know what? You can have one M&M for every item that you remember. These sort of little games that make it interesting for them is working on different parts of their memory. And then if you're tying that to some of these different awareness things, that they become more alert and aware in different environments. I don't want to bore you to tears, but I need to share part of the science part with this. There's a part of your brain that people aren't aware of, and it's called your RAS, your reticular activating system. Our brains are very, very lazy. And so it controls how much and where we place focus and cognition on. Like, for example, you don't have to think about brushing your teeth, even though you start pretty much from the same tooth at the same time. You don't have to think about putting your shoes on. You don't have to think about driving a car. And so those sort of things, if you had to think about all these things, you'd be even more cognitively tired. So your RAS, your reticular activating system, determines what you focus on and what you don't. So right now, that's why we look at faces, because as part of what we're geared to do, we don't look at what people are doing with their hands and self-pacifying gestures, what they're doing with their feet. So you need to do some things that trigger some different parts of awareness. You need to hack your brain with that sort of stuff. Police and military sometimes do that, something simple, like they say, tomorrow, I'm going to notice everything that starts with the letter D or is of the color green. And so they force themselves around about doing it. It sounds like a game, but look, green tree, someone's got a green shirt on that chocolate. It's got like a green label, whatever. It's just little things that take a little bit of your brain, but it's making your brain force on being aware of things that we don't, because our brains are quite lazy. So those sort of things help from an awareness. And as being from with a parent of two kids, my kids are older and moved out now, but these awareness type things in the games I'll be doing it with my kids as soon as they could walk and talk. I mean, imagine being my kids after behavior profiling and security, but I'd be doing those sort of things, and it just makes them aware and more confident. So does that help?
Yeah, that's awesome, and I loved those I loved those games because I know for me, I love to be told exactly what to do and the outcome that it's gonna be. Because sometimes there's moments when you're driving in the car and you're like, "Oh, what can I do and what can I say?" And I wanna connect right now, and I know that I can feel when my daughter's craving connection, and then it's like, "Oh, I spy," and it's like something in the and she's like, "Cat." I'm like, "Okay, not yet." So, that
Yeah.
was really cool, I loved that. I'm gonna have to note these down. So
So we'll tie it to, so the reason the job thing works is because it's making them aware and they're having live thought as they're seeing that person, not just seeing an object. I spy in cat, whatever. You're saying pick somebody in there as well, and like you're like, or pick the biggest person, the tallest person, tell me what they do for a job when we walk through. Don't tell me until the end. So they walk through. You've got their brain active processing while they're doing that. And so that's why these things work. It sparks different parts in their brain.
yeah, right, I'm excited to do this.
That's good.
So another thing that I noticed, so I'm not reading off any of my questions, by the way. I'm trying to memorize exactly where I want to be because there's so many topics that I could grab onto. Um, okay, so say if you're talking to somebody and you can tell that they are no longer interested, and we get this all the time as mums because our kids distract us, and
Yes.
I admittedly really struggled with this because when you go from prior to having kids, I was a hairdresser, so I'd have one client in my seat and there was always lots of connection and I was doing lots of talking and holding space and sharing and vice versa. And then
Yep.
I left that space and now then became a mum. And then in the playground, it was so different. Like I felt that no one really had wanted to talk to you because
Yeah.
their body language shifts to their kids. And, in this space of like aware parenting and conscious parenting and gentle parenting, so
Yep.
many parents are really wanting to ensure their kids are heard and their kids' needs are met first. So a lot of the time you're trying to connect with another mum and you're talking, but the kid, like a child will come involved and I'm just going to say distract you from that
Yep.
conversation and then to ensure their kids' needs are met first. And then that child goes away. And then to go back into that conversation is really hard. And I admittedly felt as if the person on the receiving end was like not because it wasn't then I would wait for the invitation to go back into the conversation. And if that invitation wasn't there, I took it as they're not interested. I'm just going to shut up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, small talk and connection like is hard. And so a couple of things. First that I'll say, let's talk about some situational stuff because we talk about the face, but the feet are the most honest part of the body. So the first thing I'm going to say is when you're out and about and you're seeing your friends and your mum friends and you see each other in a shopping center, we'll turn and say, hey, how are you? Really good. If you actually take a split second to look down, if their feet are pointed towards you and their belly button, they're happy to be here. If their feet and belly button are still pointed that way, belly away, I don't want you to stay. They're sharing with you without their words because they're being polite, but with their belly button and their feet, I'm here to be polite, but let's not talk too long. So be aware of what people are sharing with you with their feet. Just so you know, if you're in the cafe or those sort of things with mums and having the coffee as well, when we're getting ready to go, if we're being polite with our upper body, we'll cross our feet and pull our feet towards the chair because that's where we hold our tension. But when we're getting ready to go, we'll put our left foot forward and put our toes up and put one hand on the side. It's called the starter's pistol. That means I want to be out of here in a couple of minutes. See, that causes surprise micro expression in you. So the body shares these sort of things. So one thing is about the awareness from a behavior point of view. I've got to say, regardless of the parenting style, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and another child or an adult, like if things come over, I get that. But the thing is, there still needs to be like the politeness, the respect to look for these sort of things. Because otherwise, what are you passing on and teaching the child that if you go through that instantly you can interject for this conversation without that? So that's not good communication style for them. It's not polite. It's not respectful communication. Whether I got shot down in flames or anything by the people listening to your stuff, I'm happy to share it like for what it is. From my point of view, is about the fact that some of the biggest gaps that I see for children who become teenagers and get in and why they're coming to me for training is because of the fact that from a communication point of view, they've missed some of these items. They're using online or social communication getting edited, or they haven't picked up the nuances of interaction and communication. And it starts sometimes from what we see. Here's the part that'll freak you out. We absorb so much as children from our parents. It's not just about these items and their habits and tricks, our voice. So the voice, Ebony, that you're speaking to me with now, is not your real voice. It's your habitual voice. It's what you've picked up from hearing your parents speak, what you've heard for the people around you. The majority of people that I see that come in and get some training with me for a couple hours, a half day, when I show them how to get their confident voice, and I'm happy to do it here, it's going to feel a bit weird, but
Let's
you'll
do it.
realize your speaking cadence and tone is going to be not the same as how you're speaking now. Oh, you want to do it?
Let's do it.
Okay. Okay. Take this, so I'm sharing this because like you want to know. So first thing, from a communication and impact point of view, whether you're, doesn't matter whether you're mum, dad, in personal, professional circumstance, it's the same thing. One of the first communication errors that people make is we end our words with upward inflection. Now, what I mean by that is, well, rather than I talk with a downward inflection, we will say, end our words with an upward inflection. Now, we do that because we want to be happy. But what happens when we do that, we also sound less confident and a bit inquisitive with what we're saying. So we have less impact with our words. So the first thing is learning to speak with a downward inflection. Your words should slightly fall off towards the end of the sentence, like I'm doing now. So that's the first one about words dropping off. The other part about our vocal point of view is our RSVP, and it's not the dating app, it's our rhythm, speed, volume, and pitch. So it's things like our speaking cadence. Now, to find our tone, because we've just talked about with a downward inflection, here is what we're going to do. First, I'm saying up front, this is going to be weird, but if you're sharing the audio and video, it's going to make for a cracker audio and video that goes out. Okay, first thing we want to do is this. I want you to put your hand across your chest. Now, we're going to breathe in and hold the breath, but I want you to breathe in so you feel your hand rise. So you're breathing into your chest. Now I want you to do that as high as you can. And then I want you to make the snake sound on the way out. Okay. So we'll do it together. As long as you can. Good lung capacity. Now, here's the difference. I now want you to put your hand where your pinky just sits above your belly button. So drop your hand. I know it'll be off camera. That's fine. So lower your hand now and put your hand flat across, but where your pinky is just above your belly button. Now we want to do exactly the same thing. I want you to breathe in, but I want your chest to stay where it is, but I want your hand to expand there. So we're breathing to our diaphragm. So do 2 or 3 breaths first so you get used to it. You can feel your hand rising. Now what I want you to do is take a big breath in as much as you can with your hand rising and do the same S. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Okay. So first thing about that is when we speak and when we breathe, when we get nervousness, when we lack confidence, our breathing goes from our diaphragm to our chest. Not only is that making our breathing shorter, but it's placing pressure on our vocal cords. So you're not getting the same even tone. So with the second one you did, which I've got to say went remarkably long, not only can you hold more breath because you're breathing into your diaphragm, as you're breathing out with the S, it's more even. And that's how we should be speaking. So first part is breathing to your diaphragm, and that's where you're breathing from. So now the second part to this is how we're going to get your tone. And this will be really interesting because you've got a couple of ones where you end with an upward inflection. So some people use 2 hands for this because what I want is with a decent volume but a downward inflection, you're going to say the word 99. So what I want you to do though is breathe into your diaphragm first
Oh,
with your other
this is
hand.
really getting my brain going. Okay.
Well, so let's just hear the difference because you'll play back and hear this afterwards. So put
Okay.
one hand across your chest and put a little bit of pressure. Put your other hand on your diaphragm. So what I want is breathe into your diaphragm. Once you've done that with a bit of volume, I want you to say with a downward inflection, 99. Go.
Okay. Okay. 99.
Now, halfway through the 9, you'll feel a bit of vibration under your hand that's there with your chest. Now, I want you to do that again, and I want you to feel the point just where you get the vibration. Breathe into your diaphragm, and as you're saying 99, where you get the vibration.
99. Yeah, I felt it.
Okay, so halfway through that 9, where you feel that vibration, that is where your calm, authoritative tone is. That is where you can hold influence in a room. That is where, when I do keynotes to 200 or 10,000, that's the tone I speak. So the majority, if I have my hand there, vibrates the whole time. So your tone when you play this back and you hear where you just went 99 and where you ended the nine and doing that, and even your tone now, you've dropped your tone already and you're now breathing from your diaphragm. So you speak with more confidence. So, firstly, from having that confidence, own the space around you, have open power zones, open ventral area, breathe from your diaphragm, and then with a downward inflection, speak in your 99 tone. That's the first part for connection. Because whoever we deal with, whoever we meet, we all want to feel important. We all want to feel that our voice has meaning for things as well. And people need to feel that safe connection. So, these open areas, these other parts all play into that. The other part, you comfortable with that now? You can drop your hand now. You
Yep.
good?
Yeah.
Okay. The other, when you play this back, I'm so looking forward to hearing because you can already hear your tone has dropped with that as well. The other parts of that now is your speaking cadence. When we get a bit nervous, when we get excited for these sort of things, how many words per minute spike up. Now you've got Tony Robbins speaks at 207 words a minute. When I speak, and the rate I'm speaking with you now is about 165 to 175 words a minute. So I know during this conversation, and same as with the keynote I just did, if I speak between 165 and 175 with a downward inflection and the right pauses, I'm going to keep your attention. You feel calm and safe. It resonates with you. So that's with these sort of things about from a connection point of view, making people feel noticed and valued and making sure from a vocal point of view, it aligns with that calm balance that you put forward because we all want calm. We all want safe. And if we don't have calm and safe in our own lives, we gravitate to it in others. So that's why if you're a person that communicates that way, you're calm and centered, people will forget what you say, they forget what you wore, they will always remember how you make them feel. And so if people feel valued, calm and safe with you, then that's who you are. So that's why this is important. So whether it's with the mums in a park or whatever else, if you feel that connection, they feel valued, calm and centered, and you're speaking like that, you're in a better spot for connection. The other part is small talk is hard. So I teach people the FORMIC method, FORMIC, family, occupation, recreation, motivation, an item or current affair. So what I mean by that is might be, let's just say for an item. So I'm sitting next to somebody I don't know and they're dressed pretty plain, but they've got a fancy watch on or a nice necklace. And I might say, what a unique piece. I love hearing the backstories about things like that. And then I stop. You notice I didn't ask a question. I made a statement. If you ask somebody a question, their brain jumps to why are they asking? Should I tell them? How much should I tell them? All these sort of things. But if I make a statement, you're going to feel that with your personality. So I might be saying something that you mentioned about for being when you're for with a parent. And so I love hearing about how it's changed with parents' lives from just their focal point for these sort of things once they have a kid, how they really find their why. That sort of stuff is what I really love hearing about. Now I say that your brain and the reason why you're smiling is you're already going through with the response that you'd say to me. Because I haven't asked a question, I've made a statement. Now you're going to feel that not just with information, you're going to feel that with your personality. That's how we open people up. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't wait for you to hear how calm and centered your tone is when you do this now. This is why I love doing this is why I love doing what I do because I've just done a similar thing, like I said, with a couple of hundred people in some of these keynotes. Because when you're doing that, I've got a really good video where I've got about 3,000 people in a room and I did exactly the same thing. And when you hear that 99 with a downward inflection, I see some people and then they do it again 2 or 3 times and they hear their tone and they go, and then they realize that's where you get less vocal stress, all these other things. It just, then you tie and you build the non-verbal elements around it. We've said using gestures, being open in that as well. The very next day, the very next people you're speaking with go, feel really connected with you because you're calm and centered with what you do. So I love seeing the changes like that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I'm reflecting and I'm thinking about people who I'm drawn to, and they're very calm and they're grounded and they're centered. And I do
Yep.
notice that if there's someone that's more um, over the top, I can feel my body like, oh,
Yeah.
shy.
So, I mean, part of it is also for where we have that safety. I mean, safety is the precursor to everything. Safety is the precursor to happiness. It's the precursor to our own self perception or self actualization goals. You can't do any of those sort of things until you have that element of safety. It's really important. And we do that as well with the connections that we have by making people feel noticed and valued and having that right communication environment around them. So they feel safe and calm for doing these sort of things. If I'd said to you at the start for doing this before we started or had any form of connection or having this, and I said, hey, I'm going to get you to do some pretty weird stuff with breathing and noises, you would have gone, okay. But now we get a bit comfortable with each other. You were all in straight away, which is great.
Yeah, that was fun. So, body language is if we can tell somebody's body language is, I guess, shut off or shut down, or we're making, how do you then recommend to move forward from that?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we say shut down, there's different versions of that. So, one, I want to go through two different paths there. One being, you heard me say before about self pacifying gestures. So, if you and I have a conversation and you say something face to face or even online, we see the same things that causes some discomfort for me. You might see that self pacifying gesture. If you're seeing that escalate, the touching turns to scratching or gets closer to the brain, be aware that you need to adjust with the conversation you're having because that person, without their words, is showing you that they're going from stress and frustration, which isn't far from aggression and violence. The shutdown part, when we see, sometimes is minor. And what I mean by that, we know that we see these things or like in closing off, but it may be something we're speaking now and you say something that I don't like. I might go, I hadn't really thought of it that way. Like, yeah, Ebony, I've still got my head towards you, but see how I've angled my body away? That ventral area in these areas, I've reduced your access. So when you say about people shutting down, it's important to know what shutdown looks like. Shutdown doesn't mean all of a sudden that they curl up into a ball and do whatever else. Shutdown means that they reduce your access to these power zones or ventral area. It can be limited. It can start with things like that to picking up. So if you see that, then stop and think, what are we talking about now? What's changed or transitioned to cause that? Where is this heading, the communication? Because then what you can often see that if you reframe that or go to a different area, you can see people open up. So it's seeing these things live. But it's important that just because you see the behavior, you don't call them out on it. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. You didn't make me uncomfortable. What are you talking about? What do you mean? So yeah, being present and aware for these sort of things. But because of after doing this sort of stuff, you get that fresh set of eyes. So you see people will show things because they leap these physiological changes as they start processing. So if you can adjust, often I'm adjusting communication with people and doing things before they've really processed how they're feeling. So I've allowed them to reset before they've felt that full emotion, which is obviously a much better outcome.
I'm so present here with you, Scott, that there's things that you keep mentioning that I'm like, oh, I want to touch on to that. And then I'm like, no, just come back to it. And hopefully if it lands in your brain, it will. And then I'm like, no, I keep forgetting.
These are the best
Okay.
conversations where it's free flowing doing this. So upon saying that, if you want to read some of your questions, I'm all yours. So however
Okay.
you where to go, I'm really enjoying the conversation.
Trust.
Yep.
So say if we lost someone's trust, or we have someone's lost their trust within us, or we've lost our trust with somebody, how can we regain somebody's trust?
Yeah, good question. I mean, trust is repeat dependable behavior. That's what trust is. Repeat dependable behavior. So if something occurs, I can pretty much predict the way that you're going to respond and these sort of things. So that's why if something happens, whether it's about someone suddenly short or aggressive, somebody cheats, somebody these sort of things, it's a break of predictive behavior. And so it causes us to reset and rethink. So if you look at trust being that combination of those repeat dependable behaviors, how do we get trust back? Well, it's part of that reset. The reason it trust time is because people need to see then that we've reset and continuing with repeat dependable behaviors. Now, when we say repeat and dependable, means words aligning with actions, actions being continual. So people have that consistency in the way that you act, think, and feel. So they can be more comfortable in predicting what your responses will be. When I'm giving people advice for their business about trust, trust, for example, means about the fact that if you show a video what it's like in your center or what's in your website, that should match what's on your socials. That should match what it's like when they come to see you. If you're a hairdresser building trust, the website, the pictures, the videos, whatever should match when people walk through the front door of the salon. So that's the start of trust. We've had 3 or 4 elements where we've had repeat dependable behavior. Okay, this seems like a good place. And so it's the same thing. So if it's a relationship issue, first is about the transparency and openness, but then it's got to be supported over time by that repeat dependable behavior. That's how that's got to be. There's no shortcut. There's no all of a sudden if I say this or do this. It's about that dependability and showing up, because trust is all about repeat dependable behavior.
So what if someone's lost your trust and your heart wants to trust them, but they keep breaking that?
Well, I mean, a couple of things around there. Firstly, some of the things is when you need to at times make some difficult decisions about who you share your time and energy with. It's a limited resource. And so sometimes with people, if they're doing that and they're continually letting you down, and you're being present, you're being oversharing, there's sometimes where you need to make the decision that this person's not the right person for staying in my circle, for sharing of my energy. I've made some really difficult decisions when it comes to friends and family members, that with the person that you are, with the character traits, with who you are, you don't align with what I need in and around my family. I'm a really big believer. This is going to sound so nerdy, of what you learn in year 7 science about osmosis with things and things absorbing. You are not the product of, they say you're the product of what you eat and that as well. You're the product of what you immerse yourself in, who you speak to, what you read. I mean, if you have 3 hours of negative elements, so scrolling through news and whatever else, it can affect your cognitive flexibility by 15 to 20%. It's just scrolling. Now, how many people that you'll have on here and listening would be on scrolling for 3 hours through news and whatever else? It's limiting what they do. So surround and immerse yourself in positivity. And so what I mean by that is, first you need to make the decision. If you're continually trying and trying, the answer is why. Some people will do it out of habit. Some people will do it out of a pet project. I think I can get you back on track. You can't force people to change. And so the thing is, first thing I'd say is give some thought as to the longer term part as well. And when you're doing these sort of things, is that person part of the long term who you are, who your family unit needs to have around, and these sort of things? And sometimes you've got to make some difficult decisions. That's the first thing, like I'd say that. So then make that decision. If that's the case that you've made the decision then for doing it, then and be true to yourself, then sometimes you've got to have those difficult conversations. I need to share with you the fact that I think that during this time, here's the way that I've acted. I've been clear with that. I'm feeling repeat letdown, and we need to be honest to each other. We've got time, we've got history, so let's be straight and direct. If there's something about my behaviors or other things, I'm happy to speak about that too. I've got broad shoulders, but I need to let you know things can't continue as is. This is not what I want for myself from a long-term point of view. And have that conversation. That's what I think is important. We shy away from difficult conversations. And sometimes we need to make difficult conversations and also make some difficult decisions.
So what if someone has like ADHD or a tendency to be like really high energy or like then really low energy?
Yeah, I mean, so with the things I've shared with you from a behavioral point of view, whether somebody's neurodivergent or neurotypical, we all have a baseline. We still see deviations. And so the difference, some of the things I mentioned about self-pacifying gestures, people that are neurodivergent may have stimming that they're doing for things as well. For that's part of the control. If you think about what it is, it's a repeat physical thing that's giving them some element of consistency and control. We will still see deviations to that as well. So it's about being still present and aware of the people you're communicating. You've got to have that communication and understanding for things as well. And if you've got people that are within your family, friends, work circle, and these sort of things neurodivergent, you've got to give them that safe space so you can share for things as well. Understand and start with openness and understanding is a big thing there. Understand if people that are neurodivergent is stimming around you, they're sharing trust with you. They're showing you some other parts and vulnerable moments. So don't be fearful. Be comfortable and lean into having a conversation. Thank you for sharing and sharing part of who you are and these sort of things. Is there other things that I should know that will help from communication point of view? And have those sort of conversations. That's the thing that I'd say is we get fearful. We don't want to offend somebody, but sometimes all people want is that good communication and the opportunity to share and be able to work through those sort of things.
Saw you on the news one night talking about lying. So
Yes.
how can we tell if someone's lying to us?
Yeah, so I do a lot, and there's been a bit of news of late. I think the Current Affair, Channel 7, the Today and Sunrise stuff are really about the deception detection. Well, a couple of things about lying. Firstly, when people are going to lie, the brain knows what it knows. And so when we lie, there's a range of things that we do, range of behaviors that people lead. When people lie, because they're being deceptive and people want to view themselves as being good, what happens is the brain will often release cortisol, the stress hormone, as a result of lying, because they're having to process these sort of things. When they release cortisol, and cortisol goes through the body, aside from what people know with fitness and training and these sort of things, cortisol slows down your saliva production and it also makes your face more sensitive. So that's why when people are lying, and you can watch this with the politicians and things as well, their blink rate will spike, but because their mouths have gone dry, they'll lick their lips more and they'll hard swallow and touch this part of their face more. So there's some of the face indicators that we see often from deceptive behavior. The other thing, if people are lying as well, you see that they do things like they drop the pronouns and they'll cover up some of these power zones areas. So we see discomfort with what they're doing. Now, we haven't got enough time together for this as well, but there's a lot of statement and word analysis things that occur when people are being deceptive. Truth tellers convey, liars convince. So liars will, compared to what you think, they will often give you more eye contact. They'll be very limited with their words. They'll say things like, I'm trying to be as honest as possible here. Now, that sounds like a genuine statement. It's not. There's three areas of concern in there. They start that with you know. You know is assuming language. You know me. You know me, Ebony. I wouldn't lie from you to you. I wouldn't steal from you. You know. The other thing is, I'm trying to be as honest as possible. I'm trying to be honest. I'm not being honest. And how honest am I being? As possible. There's a limit to my honesty. So that one saying, if you think about from a deceptive indicator, I'm trying to be as honest as possible. Now let's talk about Erin Patterson, the Beef Wellington lady. In her police statement, you'll see that she says, I've been very helpful, very, very helpful with the health department. I've shared as much information as they've asked me. Not everything I know, as much as they've asked me. The other thing is, and this is a little bit deeper with the statement on word stuff, as adults, we've all got between 25,000 and 30,000 words in our personal dictionary. So when you ask me a question, I run back to that filing cabinet, process my answer and come back. Now, if I'm under stress and duress, if I'm lying about something, I need to run it through filters, which takes more time. That's where you see people that sometimes will open their mouth or they'll stop and process things because they're trying to process that element. So compared to how they normally speak, you'll see pauses, you'll see delays, you'll see that's the cognitive load while they run those words through filters. Now, sometimes when they come back from that, they use past tense instead of current tense and these sort of things. And that's where people leak information. Without sharing too much and making it sad, that's why, for example, there's a lot going on TikTok and Facebook about this 7-month-old boy that's missing in California. So they showed me the video. I shared it on my Instagram and TikTok where I did a behavior review. And during that time, straight away, the mum saying, "Oh, he was great. Yeah, he was a great boy. Like he kissed his sister," and the dad saying he was a healthy child. He would crawl. They're already talking about him in past tense. Parent would never talk about their child in past tense if they have any hope. So, for example, with this sort of thing, with the Emmanuel Harrow case, because of the behavioural traits that we see, fake sadness, no real emotion, talking in past tense. Sadly, I think things will come out that there's been a bad ending for that circumstance. But under stress, people leak these elements in the words and in the nonverbals. That plus the self-pacifying gestures, and all these other things that come along with it. The other tips, out there then for the mums, well, I'm really going to get shot down by everyone's partners and husbands for this sort of stuff. We use the word just when we're trying to minimize, and the most commonly used number in deception is the number 3. So if you're speaking to somebody and how much did that cost, and they say just $300, potentially not. How many beers did you have? Just 3. Minimizing word just and the number 3, probably more than 3 beers. That also flows through and you think like the murder cases with Chris Watts and others. Did you chase your partner? Oh yeah, I called 3 times, messaged 3 times. The other thing that we see is because we don't like lying, when we say that word just, we make less of ourselves. So the verbal minimizer with the word just, we follow up with a physical one. So let's just say just that if you're moving and you want me to help you, then Ebony, you might come to me and say, Scott, can I just get your help on the weekend with something? Now, see, as I've said the word just, I've lifted my shoulders and ducked my chin. As I've used the minimizing word, I've made less of myself as I've done that. And people do that in the workplace. I've just got to speak to you about something. And I just ask you about this. So we use a verbal minimizing word with the body language minimizing like you're for it as well. Stop. Stop using the word just. Fair and just is one thing, but the word just, 80% of the time, you're minimizing yourself and you have rights and ability to stand up for yourself. You have voice and meaning. So whoever listens to this podcast is going to realize they say the word just 7 or 8 times a day. They shouldn't. And they use the word actually 6 to 8 times a day. And every time you hear the word actually, they're comparing two thoughts. Did you like that dinner? Actually, I really liked it. No, you didn't. So, yeah. So, from these sort of things that we see from a deception point of view, spiked blink rate, licking of lips, touching of face, using just like another minimizing words and these sort of things, all those sort of things come together. So, that's the sort of things that we pick up.
Wow, before we go into dating, it made me think, I have heard when somebody's cheating on another person, the cheater usually starts to get paranoid or self-conscious that the non-cheater is cheating and then comes at the non-cheater and is like and might say things about you're cheating on me and blah blah blah. But and anyway, it turns out to be that the person who cheated was the one cheating. Where does that
Yes.
come from?
Well, part of it is because that part of their brain is now thinking for these behaviors as well. If I'm seeing, thinking, feeling this, it's part of that defensive mechanism. So they turn that into an offensive item to try and do that. So part of it is to turn the focus off them when they're doing these things. That can be driving part of their behavior. The other part is like from these things, the same deceptive elements that we see. So the same behavior things that I shared with you before, we see the same thing. When it comes to the dating stuff, it's similar stuff. I get a lot of questions about this. And so similar things that I've shared with you about if they're comfortable people, if they're confident, open, and relaxed, we'll take it a step further now. Some of the most vulnerable parts is with our wrist. So if you and I are sitting over here, like as well, and we're out to dinner and that sort of stuff, then the difference between you, for example, straightening your hair or you straightening your hair with showing me more of your wrist as you're doing these preen gestures, you'll do that naturally. Yeah, but even just the more we see like your things as well. So like you're touching, the more that people are naturally seeing this part of your forearm, and also parts of your neck, we're showing vulnerability and connection. So that's a good sign. The other thing is, you heard me say before about the lady in the lift where she's got her legs crossed and then she uncrosses them really quickly. So I had somebody say to me and send me a message saying, mate, I got to ask. And it was like a guy that was, compared to some of the stuff I share across my Instagram, my Facebook, my TikTok, I think it's 94% of the people that follow me are like a female. So for me, getting questions from males about dating advice is quite unusual. And his question to me was, I've been following your stuff, including watching Married at First Sight, the videos I shared. And he said, during my time when I was out, like with my date, I noticed that my date had her shoe half off and was dangling off her foot. Is that because she was bored or whatever else? And so I shared, no, that's a really good sign. Because do you think she could have a survival stress response and get up and run while she had that on? I said, of course not. And so the thing is, if we allow ourselves or the person that you're with, you're seeing that they're doing these things that can put their body in a spot they can't have a survival stress response. Shoe half hanging off and being like your things as well. They're sitting there with like standing with legs crossed in other parts as well. They're showing you they're feeling comfortable. If you're seeing more neck tilt, slowed blink rate, open power zone areas, these vulnerable things, these are all great signs that you're seeing from a non-verbal point of view. Make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. Oh, I was just going to ask for more tips about dating. So if anyone's listening who's single or dating and they may,
Yeah.
their intuition may say something's off, but the person's words are saying, no, I'm really into you, but they're doing something else. How can that person become aligned with their
Yeah.
intuition?
Yeah, well, good question. I mean, so part of that, it even starts with the dating profiles. The whole thing I said to you, truth tellers convey, liars convince. They convince with additional words, with filler words, with all these sort of things. And obviously, some people with bad intent, love bomb, and all that as well. So be aware if you think they're in a circumstance that people are continually recentering part of the conversation, they're continually going over the top, like with these sort of things. If things seem a little bit off, it's because often there's a chance that they are. You know now, and the people listening to this will know now what normal and good looks like. If people are relaxed and they're connected with these sort of things, you're going to see, look at the head tilt we've got from me now. You're going to see that these things, there's natural connection, that these other signs, people being open, relaxed, sharing these sort of things, that's what you see. Connection should look and feel real. If you're seeing things that look forced in other parts, and it shouldn't be like that. So there's one of your early indications. People should be natural, like you're relaxed and open. The other thing is we lean into what we like, we lean away from what we don't. So when I see people that, because I people watch all the time. If like today I had my presentation, my keynote, I was there an hour and a half early so I could sit in the cafe and watch people, because that's how I continually, every 2 or 3 days a week, just watch more human behavior. You see people that are getting on well and they actually sit symmetrical angles. They lean in at similar angles. There's a thing called isopraxis or mirroring. And it's a natural thing that we do. When you see people that are connected, they'll mirror what they're doing. So just so you know, because early on you're a little bit nervous when we started, I started mirroring your gestures. So I'd mirror your head tilt. If you move this arm, I'd move this arm because I wanted you to feel comfortable. When you watch his back, you'll realize these sort of things as part of why you relax, because we see elements of ourselves and it gives us calm. So we see these things when we see dating. So first, be relaxed, be present and aware. Look for changes when people share more of their power zone areas with you or withdraw them. Those other items, and then you know the deceptive stuff as well. So when they're speaking about family, friends, work, you see that their speaking cadence gets faster. They touch part of their face, they're licking their lips, all these sort of things in that as well. These are some of the other indicators. But always, always don't, as you see something, jump and think, oh, I've seen that. Always revalidate. So change your conversation to something else and then loop back. Oh, so sorry, you mentioned your work like you're like in the city, and see, and if you see that change again, that the same behavior, spike, blink rate, touching base, other parts as well, after you've changed topic and they've opened up, you know there's more to that. So trust your gut with this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Does that
wow.
help?
Yeah, that does. Something that I did really love something that you shared about habits and structures and goals. You talk about building positive habits based off a book that you recently read or that you've read.
So I read lots of books. I read on average probably 7 to 8 now a week on different parts, because I've got to stay ahead of facial micro expression, statement analysis, body language, security, safety, risk, all these sort of things. One of the best books I've read in 10 years is by Charles Duhigg, Duhigg. It's called The Power of Habit. And his book runs through, he's got another book called Super Communicators, which is a wonderful book as well. But The Power of Habit is, in my opinion, probably one of the most transformational books that has ever been published. For anybody that, I want to start training at the gym and I just haven't, I want to start reading more, I want to focus more on myself and haven't, he's got some wonderful content in there about setting habits and setting and changing what we do with our habit loop to help with setting our goals and reaching those goals. And it might be something as simple as, let's just say that you wanted to start training in the gym, and your number one thing, your number one habit loop is in the morning, you get up and you have your coffee, if that's part of one of the number one habit things that you do. So tie your goal to that. So what I mean is, get up in the morning and always get dressed in your workout clothes before you have your coffee. Then you can make the decision if you're going to work out. Now you've tied that item to another part of your preset daily habit loop. And we all know if you've taken the time to get into your gear and everything like that and gone through that effort, more likely you're going to train. So it's changing a keystone habit to something else that you have with another part of a habit loop and then building on that. With goals, I've got a bit of an unusual approach to goals, because people set goals and they do goals on financial point of view and asset point of view. I think it's important to set development goals, to set social goals. And it may be something as simple as, every week I want to speak to one person I haven't spoken to for more than 3 months. Now that will take some time to reflect and say, oh, I haven't seen this person for ages. It may be family, friend, or whatever. And that one conversation with you start just by having that focal point can sometimes change people's lives, because they may be thinking the same thing. So that's, I think when we set goals, I think goals, so practical, the whole sort of mix, financial, social, and those sort of things, that's where we set goals. Goals are not just the financial stuff. And don't get me wrong, I've got some really weird things, because obviously you said about some, mum and kid stuff. I used to do things with the kids where once a fortnight we would have a coin night, which means we'll go out and buy takeaway from wherever you want, but we're only spending the coins that you can find in and around the house. And so the kids would spend the entire day going through lounges, where the keys are kept, all this sort of stuff. And sometimes they go, we found $49. And so, you know what? We would then walk with the coins and they would go into McDonald's and they needed to pay with the coins to get whatever they wanted to order. So we taught them the value of money for doing these things, but the communication part for them dealing with and having to communicate when they were ordering, because they did it. I've got to say, I'll share with you then a very valuable lesson that I learned. I started keeping $2 coins in my car for the car wash, and sometimes you forget about how much. So on one of these days, my daughter twigged and found that part in my car. So unbeknownst to me, when it was 4:30 and I said, "What have we got?" She poured this all out and said, "We've got $138 to spend tonight for dinner." So you know what? Lesson learned. We had dinner, popcorn, got some movies, whatever, all that sort of stuff. So I'm a big believer in trying to tie some of these things together. If you can make it fun, they get some good learning on communication, the value of money, whatever. Do that sort of stuff. So build those sort of things and put that in your goals as well.
I want to circle back to lying. I recently learned something that I think is really, really cool, especially for us parents. I
Yep.
had her name's Marion Rose. I'm doing her course at the moment, and she talks about she's an aware parenting instructor, and she talks about raising kids and listening to feelings. And one of the things I find really interesting, now I'm analyzing everything I do talk to you. I'm like, don't touch here. I'm touching here. Oh, I'm looking away. I feel so seen.
I'm glad that you feel seen because I'm really enjoying our connection. And these sort of things, it's because you just been made aware of it. So you'll be hyper vigilant for about 48 hours. Same as people that if they're watching this as well, if you share the video with as well, they'll be a little bit the same because they're going to hear and pick these things up. I can tell you already now from when you listen to this and how you're communicating naturally now because you're more calm and centered and you're aware of your breathing and tone, your words have more impact. You're speaking with a fluid tone. You're placing less pressure on your vocal cords for these sort of things.
Okay, Marion Rose. So the lying part. One of the
Yep.
things that she says in this course is, so she got her son on a podcast and he's 21. The way she parents is really like so different to what I've ever seen before. And it triggers that part in my mind that like, we can't be like this to our kids. And like, she doesn't do discipline and she doesn't do good girl or bad and not wrong from right. It's just like all feelings are valid and all actions are valid. So in my mind, I'm like, well, that's going to raise this type of kid, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so she got her son on a podcast and he was now 21 or 19 or something in this podcast. And she speaks about a story about the first time he ever lied to her. And he was around the age of 13 and him and his friend lied about where they were going and they went and visited a girl and then it
Yep.
got found out. And when she sat them down at the table that afternoon, she said to them, I need to apologize. And he said, why, mum? And she said, well, you've lied because you haven't felt like I've given you enough freedom for you to do what you want to do. So therefore, I'm sorry, but from that, I also need to know where you are because it's my job to keep you safe. So next time, can you please let me know where you want to go and what you want to do? And I'll ensure that I can give you a bit more freedom, but it also has to match in with what I need from you. And I thought that was really cool because
Hmm.
as a parent, we can be s- too strict sometimes. And
Yes.
I felt that really valuable. And I've come back to that because I think that would be a lot for a parent to stop and say, well, no, I've actually not given you enough freedom to do what you want. And now you've gone to a friend's house and I didn't know where you were. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, one, I'm very comfortable in having the conversations like around there. I think the conversations are right. I disagree with the I apologize that this has happened because it's my fault for doing that because you're rewarding poor behavior. And
The
so you're
thing is,
getting a positive.
I may not be wording it properly because I listened to this a little
Sure.
while ago. And
Yep.
yeah, so I can't remember word for word what she said.
So from my point of view is, and I say for the dynamic like with my kids, is being honest and upfront with them to the point that, you know what, while I'm an adult now and things I've made mistakes, I'm gonna make mistakes. The things that you're doing, the things that you're thinking, I've done the same thing. I've done the whole sneak out. I've done the hey, say I'm going out and drunk and then gone to work the next day and whatever all these sort of things we've had. It's part of growing up. It's part of who you are. You're going to learn these lessons. Like, here's some that you're going to like, and like, here's some you're not going to. And as a parent, my job isn't to keep you wrapped up in a bubble. My job is to allow you to learn and stretch your wings with things and have as much positive in your life, but to know you got enough reality and awareness of some of the other side as well, so you see the disparity and the difference, because otherwise you won't. And then when it hits, that's when you have issues with coping, with stress, with all these other parts in the back end of it. So I think rather than focusing on these parts and the end point, and even if you got some parts wrong, the apologizing for that framework, you said that really fluidly. So that's stored. So I believe you probably got that bang on. I believe in having the conversation, but it's creating the feeling of safety, openness, and trust, not going through and apologizing in advance for that because you're rewarding that negative behavior. And so I disagree with that part from an approach point of view. I think that from that perspective, having the conversation and saying, look, we've both got things, and as you're getting older now, there's going to be some stuff in your environment that you're going to want to do, that you're going to want to experience. Understand there's going to be some times that I feel like I'm going to fly off the handle. I've got a protective thing with you. I'm your parent. That's how I'm going to be. I suppose part of it is I don't want you to make some of the mistakes I've made, but I understand some of it is the learning process you need to get by going through it. So all I ask is that we're open, like you're with each other from these sort of things. It's not for me for making the harsh judgments and whatever else. Sure, I might roll my eyes and whatever, same as you're going to roll your eyes when I say some things. But it's all underpinned by that love and connection. I want you to have the best opportunities so you can make some choices. And I accept that some of those are going to be ones that I don't like, but this all needs to be based on openness and trust. So I think setting that up front and seeing those sort of things, so being comfortable, um, I think from that point of view, one of the things I'm most proud of is the dynamic that we've got, okay, with our children, and about the fact how they are with each other. You know what I mean? One of the things I set as a parent, and I've been very, very big on from as soon as my children were born, it's one thing parents focus on, come back and tell me everything that's going on and all that sort of stuff as well. We did that partially the other way. So saying to my son, "Oh, make sure you can, yeah, keep your sister updated, whatever else." So they'd come home from school and do different things. They would speak to each other first. They would share that. They share each other's high moments, low moments, and all that sort of stuff. They get used to that sort of stuff because the parent-child dynamic is one thing. If you build that dynamic, that connection with your children, that as well, it heightens their capability from those sort of things and how they use, like, those connections. The other part and the sad part is we're not going to be here from forever. And so sometimes the connection that your kids have, like in other parts of that as well, how they form those relationships, what they share, how they share, that's part of that safe web that you should build around them. So, look, I'm not an ideal parent. I'll say some of the things that I did early, I probably did some right things, but for different reasons. I micromanaged part of my kids growing up. I worked out milestones and goals for fine motor skills, for memory, for all these sort of things. Like for it as well, thinking, I want to make sure we embed some of these items. This is going to sound really bad. And if there's one thing that I'm going to say that's going to get me booted off or like a negative feedback or one of these things, I look at part of it being as the same way that we bring up puppy dogs and whatever, these sort of things with socialization, that the dogs that have gone out and had experience and had the lawn mowed around them and gone to the market have been experienced with the good as well as the bad side of life. So they have some more element and confidence. And I think it's a similar element, like for with things like for with children, that we need to be able to immerse them in different experiences. We shouldn't shelter them, have them like in a bubble. They need to know from that safe and trust space that I'm always going to be here. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you've had 6 drinks when you should have had one or two, you shouldn't have had any. I'm a safe space you can always call, because then you get kids that are going to lie and stay at their friend's place and whatever else. And don't get me wrong. I mean, imagine being my kids with deception detection. They can't plan a surprise party for me, let alone let me do these sort of things. But I think it all comes down to what we want to build. We want to build that connection, that openness and trust. That there'll be some stuff we disagree about, but we always want to have a safe space that we can actually still have that and respect each other's thoughts. And if you set that as I think is about a bit of a style, then you've got to build what's unique around for you, your experience, what it's like with you, the dynamic you had when you were a child compared to your parent, what you've led, what you've read, what you've trained. I mean, the thing you're doing with the training program compared to whatever you've read. And I can see when you talk about these things and about parenting, how passionate you are, you light up with that sort of stuff. So you would have immersed yourself in a lot of these things. So you are a product of everything you've immersed yourself in, the conversations with your friends, the conversations you've had with parents or other parts in it as well. Articles you read, all those sort of things. Your kids haven't got the same opportunity, that they've got limited elements. So in other words, even saying the same thing, here's my thoughts, but you know what? If you think some of the things that I say are harsh, then go out and read, check, come back to me, and let's have an honest chat around that sort of stuff. So, you know, I agree with part of the outcome, but I don't agree with some of the methodology that I suppose that parenting approach has taken.
Already when you were sharing that, I felt like I would want to share. I would want to say to you, "Hey, Dad,
Yeah,
guess what I did?" Or this is what I did, and because I
yeah,
know that it would be, I guess, as a child, when it's like, "Well, they're just not gonna understand, so I'm gonna do it anyway, and I'm just gonna lie because I wanna do it," and if they don't understand, it's just like you just shy away from that conversation, where if they hold somewhat of a, "I'm your
mm,
teammate," and like you're saying, when you were saying that, I felt like we're on the same team, and
yeah,
being your child, you're saying, "Yes, my job is here to lead you. It's to keep you safe, but I love
yeah.
you, and it's unconditional, and you can come to me, and I may correct you wrong from right, but I'll always be here."
So let's reframe a little part of that and the word, like with the word lead. And this is going to sound corny again, but I'm really enjoying the conversation. I want to share as much, and then you can use as much or as little of this stuff as you share, as much as you want. Rather than saying leading, I'm a big believer, and this is my personal approach. So this isn't in any book or other part. This is straight out of my head and heart. I believe that who we are as people, as parents, as who we are in the workplace, or we're torch holders. And there's different torch holders that we have, and at different times we've got different roles. At sometimes with the people that we're with and the people around us will hold the torch on themselves. Look what I've done. If you want to be the same, then you should look, and these sort of things where we shine the torch on ourselves. At some stage in parenthood, rather than watch me and the model and how you should be, we hold the torch in front for with our kids and say, come towards the torch. This is the path. I'm lighting the path for you. So I'm going to share parts of who I am, but I'm going to share for you. And so you can have your own path, but here's the direction for going through. And then the hard part from a parent point of view is the final part where the torch goes not on you or the path, it's directly on them. I'm just so happy for who you are and what you've achieved for these sort of things. And we're going to learn from each other because you're going to share of your experiences. And we built that circle, that framework, that trust, that safe network where we can do that without judgment. So I know that's sort of corny, but does that make sense a little bit to you with the different stages of holding a torch?
Yeah, it does. I definitely have found, and you hear it a lot when you first become a mum, that like the identity shift and the identity crisis. And I felt like I didn't have that with my daughter
Yeah.
Ziggy, but I feel like after having my second, it's all kind of hit me now. And where I was going to go with that is something that I've realized, I guess, in the parenting world. So many parents want the best for their kids. However, what I've started to realize is it's not about what we do for our kids or tell our kids what they should do, what they should eat and what hobbies they should have. It's showing them about how committed we are to how we look after ourselves, and it's about us leading the way. So when you use that analogy about how we shine the torch for ourselves, I do find that really so important about honoring us first
Mm.
and honoring our like relationship first so they can look and see it, because we can talk the talk, but it's how we walk the walk, right?
Yeah, 100%. Our words have to align with our actions, otherwise they're empty. So, and some parents will say that. They will say, oh, but I want you to be like this because I wasn't. I'll learn from what I did. Well, you know what? In the nicest possible way, you're not dead. Reflect some of your changes now and do some of the hard work now. I mean, I set up this charity called Young Men of MacArthur, and because I moved on to some other stuff with some of the women's domestic violence and homeless shelter stuff, so I stopped it. But I ran that for a couple of years, and it was purely set about the fact that for some of the young men around the area and where I'm from, like here for things as well, that they didn't have access to positive role models. And so with teenagers, for example, you've got to try and grab that risk-free environment. Can you imagine me putting something out saying, okay, to you teenage boys, we're going to talk about respectful relationships, about financial management, about how to change the oil, like about all these sort of things. Do you think anybody would turn up? So rather than do it that way, I thought I'd take a unique approach. And so what we did was I got one of the local areas, Gledwood, which is out near Warren, and wonderful people, this lady Nadine out there. We got a chef in to teach them how to make chicken cordon bleu, but we spoke about respectful relationships while these kids are around the kitchen chopping up bacon and learning a recipe with the chef. I got a mechanic in to put a car up on blocks. And while we did these things and they're changing oil and water and tires and getting their hands dirty and doing stuff, we spoke about connection, about some managing ego and all these other sort of things. So what I worked out really quickly was, as a parent compared to a child, our version of what we think is a safe environment is different than what theirs is for that risk-free environment for them to learn and ask questions. It was vastly, vastly different. Now, I very much underestimated the impact of that. When I had, from my point of view, I jumped into security and safety mode. So while they're in the kitchen with the chef doing chicken cordon bleu, I'm seeing them chop up chicken schnitzel and my head's into safety. God, don't chop your fingers off and that sort of stuff. I was so focused on that, I missed the most important moment. There was parents that were outside the kitchen looking in, and a couple of mums were in tears. And when I spoke to them afterwards, said, "Everything's okay." Well, look, what's the situation? They said, "John's not speaking to any kid at school. He's really, really sheltered. So seeing him doing this, working with another person and doing that is something I've never seen. It's made me really, really happy." And I get calls later on after that saying, and the funny thing is, and you know what, you'll be the same like as this. I got a call from another mother saying, "I just want to share with you that after the session, like you came through and mentioned her son's name, sat at the dinner table and we talked about like what had occurred that day and being in there." And to me, that's a normal thing because I've shared with you my approach. It's always being open and being present and aware and doing that sort of stuff. But it was a unique thing. So I think it's different. I think setting the risk-free and safe space, we need to understand from the kid's perspective. And the word that you said before about, setting, what's good for them and like in that as well. Well, understanding what does good look like, because their version of good and a good, safe life and whatever that they have could be vastly different than ours. So why should we be mapping the journey from them without hearing from them? And it changes as they age, what that looks and feels like. So I think that's part of that presence and that openness, being able to have that environment and have those discussions is important.
I want to
I'm loving
circle
seeing
back.
see you so relaxed and calm with this. This is why I enjoy these conversations. I'm really
I'm
enjoying it.
taking it all in. I was talking before, and as I went to go on my tangents about Marion Rose, you picked up that I said absolutely twice.
Actually, you said the word actually twice.
Actually twice.
So as you're saying that, and then like an actually, every time we use the word actually, we're comparing two thoughts. So in other words, if you're thinking something and thinking, oh no, actually, here's what I want to talk about. So we use the word actually. So let's just imagine I gave you the cooking example. Let's just say that we're together with our family and you've made this dinner, this chicken cordon bleu, you've slaved over all day. And sadly, you've butchered it and it tastes terrible. I don't want to offend you. So when you say, did you like dinner? I'm going to say, actually, I really liked it. So I'm saying I really liked it, but with the word actually. So what thought do you think I'm comparing it to? Oh my God, that was horrible. So you will now hear people say the word actually when you get a present. Did you like it? "Oh, actually, I really liked it. Thank you." No, they didn't. So you use the word actually twice because you went on a different memory tangent. No, actually, I want to speak about here because we're in a different part, but you had a separate thought. So the word actually always means you're comparing two thoughts.
Scott, I struggle with this so much. My brain fires way quicker than my mouth. And especially when I'm in the podcast space, and it's something I really hope to work on, that I want to remember and I want to note things to talk about, because you may have said something that came up that I think, oh, I got to note that's cool, but I want to stay present and absorb. And then I finish, and then I'm like, where do I go back? And I notice that when I'm speaking, and I do this when I'm speaking to someone as well, especially if I'm excited, I'll be speaking and then another thought will come into my brain and I'm like, oh, like shiny object over there. And I
Yep.
just forget. How
Well,
can I
well, first,
get?
let's give you a tip like you're with that. So when we're talking for these sort of things, and if we're running through, because sometimes when something you're saying that if I speak to you or say something or ask something and you jump, it's because we jump into the response. We think as well that we don't like uncomfortable silences. We don't like pauses. Speaking cadence and pause, because we've already got your tone right. Speaking cadence and pause allows people to process. And if somebody says something to you, if somebody shares something with you or if somebody asks you a question, take that as a present. They're sharing that with you. And so accept that present with a breath. Now, what I mean by that is you ask me a question. I'm not straight away split second go banging with the answer. I'm going to breathe in and accept that present with a breath, which means I want to have that extra second. Then I want to process that, come back. And when I'm ready, I'll respond with the words I have prepared because I value your question. I also want to make sure that if I'm the best version of myself, I'm going to give that thought. And so the thing with you, with yourself is to do what you're doing now to take your time and be centered because as soon as and when you listen to this stuff back, I'm not saying for you to be self-critical, but where you will hear the difference from some of the first parts to how you've been. Your speaking cadence has slowed down, your tone's evened out. And the more you get used to sitting in that pocket, I have no doubt now if you had your hand here, you'll find a lot more of your words will be vibrating because you're in a centered tone. The more that you do that, these other things fade away. And so when you get those thoughts and that as well, I mean, that's the other part as well is when you're having these conversations with that break. And when I'm sometimes doing podcasts or everything, I'll say, I need to interrupt there because you've shared something that's really important. I need to ask this. And if there's something that sparks that, I mean, you know, we with this sort of thing and with this conversation, there's sometimes that I mean, it happened twice when we started today. You shared a couple of points that you didn't understand the importance from what you've shared with some of these things about awareness and that as well. So conversations are not naturally you speak, break, I speak, break, you speak. You know, it ebbs and flows and whatever. But if you're both connected to the conversation, you both respect each other's part. There's going to be some times where you say, hang on, I'm not going to let you off that easy. Share a bit more about that. Or let me interrupt you there. That's part of conversation. Lean into it and accept it. The other part I've got to say, you're doing what a lot of other people don't. You're putting yourself out there with doing these things, doing these conversations. I know from checking my background and deception detection and behavior and whatever, you would have been a little bit nervous from starting that. But you've reached out and we've had this chat and done these sort of things. Know as part of these things for when with you doing that as well. I always before any conversation, before any meeting, stop and think, why? Why am I doing this? What do I hope to value? What do I hope to give out of this? Now, for me, looking at some of the stuff that you share, you talk about values approach. You talk about like your change role of parent on that as well. So my why for doing this is to make sure I do as much as I can and stay centered on giving stuff that whoever's listening to this can have some real change in the easy stuff for the next day. So I circle back to that. That's what keeps me present and centered. Things can go off the rails. It doesn't matter. You just need to roll with it. And you know what? Have a bit of a laugh. I had another thing that I was going to ask you. You know what? I've completely lost it. I'm sure because we were talking in the same vein, it's going to circle back. Let's keep rolling. So don't beat yourself up about it. There is one of the best examples in the world of this from one of the best communicators in the world. Barack Obama, when he was United States president, was doing a speech. And while he was doing a speech, the presidential seal at the front of the lectern fell off. And the whole room went, but without a split second hesitation, he said, it's okay. I think you guys all know who I am. But aside from that, let's give a thought to the person out the back who set this room up because they're probably pretty nervous right now. So when something major happened that panicked others, he just stayed calm and centered and leaned into it and was still other person centered. So I've seen a couple of times today when you've said that in a question, you sort of stop and beat yourself up about it, lean into it. Just accept it. There is no such thing as a perfectly fluid conversation. These things ebb and flow. That's the organic, natural element. That's what makes conversations beautiful. You know, the more you do the things that I do, I've loved the times that I've said things and I've seen my words land with you. That's what top communication is about for this sort of stuff. So don't ever worry about that. Don't ever apologize like you're for it. The things come in and out like you're for it. It's human contact. That's what's going to happen.
I really love that, Scott. Now that we're getting to the end of the time, we want to wrap it up. I do want you to share with my listeners and the person that's listening with us today your 1 minute life hack.
Start with the deathbed exercise is the first part. So when you're laying in bed and when your eyes open up, before your feet hit the floor, think if this bed I'm laying in is my deathbed, do I have the people around me that should be with me that are sharing of my energy? And am I contributing to what I want to be leaving behind? That's the first part. So the deathbed exercise is really, really important. It will center and focus you every day. Spend some time journaling and so share to get things out. The most effective people, because some people have issues with their stress because they don't sleep well or overthinking things. If you journal, it's not just for the big corporates. You clear your mind. So set yourself a template, download the day one app or something, and put in there things like, what did I do well today? How could I have communicated better today? What's important to me? What am I grateful for? You will empty your mind. So it means that you sleep better because you're not carrying those things. And first thing in the morning, you can go through and check that. Now, the other thing I need to say, there is a 1 minute hack that I shared in my video that this is another Scott unique thing. Box breathing, which is breathing in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. 2 cycles of that take exactly 32 seconds, and it lowers your heart rate and blood pressure. Now, the instrumental bit of AC/DC's Thunderstruck goes for exactly 28 seconds until the first word thunder. Now, if you hum that, it activates the vagus nerve, which is connected through to our brain, digestive organs, and helps our body cope with stress. So if you take 1 minute a day to do 2 box breathing cycles and hum the instrumental bit of Thunderstruck, your body will deal with stress better. You will be more centered and mindful, and you will have a better, more positive day. There you
Do
go.
you mind if we do it now?
No, I've got no problems like you were doing, like we're doing that. I haven't got my iPad for Thunderstruck, but getting used to the box breathing part if you haven't done that. So you need to have Thunderstruck because it's literally up until thunder. But then the other part is about for the breathing point of view. So for box breathing,
Okay,
have you done this
let's do.
before?
No, I haven't. I have heard of box breathing, but I haven't practiced it.
Okay. Well, literally, I'll do the 1, 2, 3, 4 as we breathe in, and
Yeah.
then you hold the breath 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you breathe out for 4 seconds, 2, 3, 4, and then you hold empty for 4 seconds. And you do that twice. So even if you just do that, and then you know the AC/DC Thunderstruck, just do that 5 times then. The combination of those between the box breathing and the activation of the vagus nerve has you centered with a lower heart rate and lower blood pressure. All right, we'll
Wow.
try. So you got to
Let's do
breathe
it.
in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. You ready? Go.
Yeah, let's go. Mm, 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 mm.
There, there you go.
That's so awesome. So,
So it
how often
sounds
do you
weird.
need to practice that one?
Oh, I mean, so a couple of times a day. I mean, so
Okay,
the thing is, from a mindfulness and balance point of view, it's sometimes weird things. And what I mean by that is if you do something silly, like if you brush your teeth with your right hand tonight, brush your teeth with your left hand, it will force your
okay.
brain to be more present and aware. If you use the dishwasher tonight, wash the dishes by hand. Any of these sort of things that you do between that sort of stuff for just one off unique experiences forces you to be more present and more aware. We owe that to ourselves. We owe that to the people around us to be present and aware.
I've really valued my time with you today, Scott.
Oh, good. I've really enjoyed the chat as well. Let me know when it's shared. I'll when you're getting it up and about, I'll share it about and tag the world like as we do it. No problems to get it out there.
Thank you. Where can everybody find you?
So at and then it's Scott Taylor official is on my social. So that's on TikTok, on Instagram, and then Facebook. Or otherwise, the website's Presidium Group, Praesidium group.com.au, and that's got everything that we do in there. And reach out for a chat. But yeah, I've really liked the talk today.
Thank you so much for coming on.